Leuk nieuws, want er komen 28 extra voorstellingen in nieuwe Nederlandse theaters. Het eerste theaterseizoen van mijn Oersterk theatertour was compleet uitverkocht. En ik ben enorm dankbaar voor alle positieve reacties. Op vele verzoek komt er een reprise, dus een tweede seizoen. Van september 2024 tot en met april 2025. Met andere woorden, jij krijgt nieuwe kansen om mijn show alsnog te komen bijwonen. Wat levert dit je op? Een concreet en simpel stappenplan om jouw zelfzorg te optimaliseren. Maar vooral een uniek avondje uit met kennis, inspiratie en humor wat bijdraagt aan een sterker lijf en een betere wereld. Dit is belangrijker dan ooit, want de volksgezondheid staat steeds meer onder druk. Vanuit de officiële instanties leren we nergens over hoe we goed voor ons lichaam en brein kunnen zorgen. Niemand komt je redden, dus je bent zelf verantwoordelijk. Is gezondheid ook jouw grootste kapitaal? Zet dan een eerste stap en kom naar mijn show met vrienden, familie of collega's. Want ook zij verdienen meer vitaliteit, toch? Graag tot snel bij een van de aankomende 28 theatershows.
Hi, my name's Dayne Ferrar and you're listening to the Primal Power podcast.
Je hebt een druk bestaan en je wordt vaak geleefd. Je lijf en geest zoeken rust omdat je alles maar geeft. Goed nieuws, dit is jouw moment. Versterk je gezondheid en geluk met de lach. De rode loper ligt weer uit richting een stralende dag. Je voelt je oersterk met
Here we are for a podcast with Dayne Ferrar. Dayne is a chiropractor and founder of Human Health Chiropractic in Amsterdam. I'm eager to know more about his tips for a better life. Let's start.
De Oersterk podcast. Een ontdekkingstocht naar een beter leven.
Dayne, welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
It is. I heard you say that the most undervalued asset on the planet is the human brain and body. Why?
I think it's because the journey I've been on, and yeah, I lost my father to lung cancer when I was 15 years old. The reality of what I didn't know before he got sick versus the reality of what I learned after he was sick and then starting to be a chiropractor, having originally wanted to be a medical doctor, was that I realized there's so much I didn't know, and what I didn't know was so powerful in terms of, number one, how intelligent the brain and body is. And then also the reality of just how powerful the body can be when given the right circumstances, and that it's able to self-heal and self-regulate. But I was never taught that, or no one really gave me the explanation that the body could actually do a lot of the things by itself. And so then for me, as I studied and then qualified, work with professional athletes, building a clinic, it became more and more aware for me that a lot of the things that people struggle with was just a lack of understanding of what the brain does and how it works, and then how the body works and what we can do to just look after it well. And then for me it was so simple on one hand, but then the other hand I was like, I had to study to understand how incredible it was, because there's a lot of intricacies that make a big difference when you know how things are regulated. But at the same time it made me humble to realize how incredible the body is, but then at the same time, how powerful it is. And then when you look at what's possible, like what some humans have been able to achieve that were told it will never be possible to run a mile in this time. And then suddenly people do it and they're like, oh, what we thought was possible, impossible is now possible. Or what certain athletes are able to achieve. And that for me was just, okay, there's more that we can do than we realize, but it's all based on the principles of physics and nature. And that was for me the big part, where it's like, wow, there's so much that if we were just living natural lives, so much more is possible. But we live in a society now which is just overstimulated and stressed, which for all the right reasons can be that. But for me, it was just gigantic. And then I was like, okay, how do I recognize that in myself? And then how do I help others make better decisions when they realize how incredible the brain and body is? And because we have a brain and it has an imagination, we can send rockets to the moon. We can make incredible discoveries in nature. That what we discovered was already there. We just found better ways of finding out what was there. And that for me is just profound. And I think that's what will continually be my life journey of just like, okay, this brain and body is incredible. How do I respect that, honor that, work with it, and help people realize that, just by being human, there's an incredible power and intelligence in the body. I mean, I looked at my wife giving birth to my son. I felt utterly useless in that whole process. I mean, I just helped her breathe, right? Here it comes, 10, 9. And then it was like, and then just such a amazing, just seeing her in her own power give birth naturally. And then here this human was that had been in her body for 9 months and can breathe, can suck on the nipple. Profound. And then just seeing this little guy develop and my wife breastfeeding and his body growing. I mean, that just happens by itself and we just don't even think about it. And then I think what happens is as we get older and then have to take responsibility for our health and our brain and our body, then there's like suddenly this gap and then it's like external reliance on other things. And so for me, it is the most undervalued asset on the human planet. And that just means we have all the power in our decisions and our responsibility to make a difference. And that for me, that's probably been one of the most defining realities for me of like, it's all already in here. Just how well do we look after it and what context do we put our bodies and brains in every day for 80, 90 years? That's going to make a big difference on our quality of life and function. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that context. And you were also saying the physical laws of the law of physics and nature.
Yeah.
You talked about your father. Yeah. He died when you were 15.
Yeah. Sorry, he died when I was 19.
Okay.
But we moved from from South Africa to England when I was 15. My brother was 15, 16.
Yeah, because your father discovered a lump, which turned out to be lung cancer, and 6 months later he died. Yeah. What role did his life and death play in your life?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most profound things that has happened to me, and I think will ever happen to me, in the sense that I think a lot of people walk around living like they're never going to die, either because they're choosing to just ignore that reality, but also people can just be so stressed and dealing with everything that's going on that they don't make decisions recognizing that there will come an end point to their life. So when you suddenly, I mean, finding that lump, I actually found it. My dad was sitting in front of me and I was pressing on his shoulders and then I felt the lump on the right side and I was like, Dad, there shouldn't be a lump there with what I know. And I was in the process of going towards studying medicine. And so I was like wanting to help people, and then suddenly I'm going to study this course, and then my dad's in front of me and goes from a lump in his neck, classified healthy, no real symptoms, to then 2 weeks later diagnosed with a primary tumor in his right lung, with an apical lung tumor, and then after that it was into his bones and everything else. And so for me it was that whole process, and then seeing him suffer, that made me realize, whether we like it or not, suffering is a part of human life, and so is death. And so we can celebrate life when we know there will be death, or we can ignore it and then let it happen in ways that we don't expect. And of course, if there's accidents or things happen, that's never something that we want to go through, but that's also life in a way. So it really grounded me. It made me realize that there are laws of physics and nature that define everything, and that there's consequences of decisions my dad made in his life before I was born, and then even during growing up, that meant that the possibility for cancer to grow and to be in his body, and then to see how that worked out. So they gave him 2 years to live, and in 6 months he was dead. Made me appreciate life. So it made me inspired by what is possible with the human brain and body and life. But on the flip side, it also made me realize there's consequences for all decisions that we make, and also the body is a closed system, so what comes in and out of it has to be processed. And in that sense, it made me appreciate the people that were in my life and that were alive, but it also made me realize, okay, to see the pain and suffering my mom and my brother went through, including the pain I felt and the suffering I went through, gave me a determination and a power that doesn't matter who stands in front of me. I'll be like, I just want to find the truth of how the brain and body functions, and how do we do that in the most natural way. And so in that context, one of the most profound things that's ever happened to me, and also in a way a gift, because of course if my dad could be back here right now, I would take that 100% of the time. but physics means he died and he's gone. But at the same time, the lessons I've learned and the power that's given me in my own life to recognize how important my decisions are and how I live my life, and then to be a father now with my own son, it's crazy. And so when you ask me some of these questions, it's like the questions that I've answered deep down inside of me, yeah, the most profound thing that could have ever happened, and also created a grounding and a framework for me to go away and try and understand myself. But I mean, I also went, geez, if there was a book or there was a possibility to understand, I mean, I studied anthropology, epistemology, theology, philosophy. I just went through ethics. I try to understand what is right or wrong, where do we come from, why do things work, why does physics have these rules of thermodynamics, and yeah, I went down all of that stuff because I had so many questions. Because bless the doctors, I mean, first you go to the GP says this is not good. This is not my field of expertise, so they refer my dad to a specialist. Then he goes to get a scan, and the scan shows, yeah, okay, there's something there that shouldn't be there. Then he gets referred to an oncologist. An oncologist says, yeah, this is not good, we think it's cancer. Then they do biopsies, and they confirm, yeah, it's cancer, it's grade 3 or grade 4. And then, okay, we don't have any tools in our toolbox in order to help you. This is terminal. We think you got 2 years left to live. We're going to put you on chemotherapy and radiation, and let's hope for the best. And then I was like, I don't know, you grow up thinking, okay, they know everything. And then when you start to look at it all, you realize they're just incredible people that want to help, but there's also just certain limitations of when you've lived in a certain way that no one's really helped my dad realize the consequence of those decisions. And then suddenly you met at a point where it's like, yeah, well, sorry, we can't actually help you. That was profound for me. So that's also what made me shift from wanting to be a medical doctor. There was a guy in the church that we were going to that was a chiropractor, and I was like, wow, this is where hands-on people feel a difference, but you can educate them really early on to make decisions and trajectory towards health and function. And so it just meant that I realized, okay, and that's where my life sort of shifted to studying to be a chiropractor. But yeah, sorry, big questions, so it's also deep answers in a way.
What struck me was that you said my father was very responsible, but we don't learn to take responsibility for our own health in modern society. Now you are a father of your own son. Should we teach this knowledge to children in primary education?
As a statement, 100% yes.
And how? Because maybe also in a playful way.
Yeah, I think, I mean, these are big concepts of like education systems and how they are trying to do their best in order to help our kids get an education. Like, what is that? I mean, life in and of itself is an education, right? So for me, even with how we look at, I'll explain, I think, how I see it with my own son, because I think that makes it easy in the context of what we do. I always, with my son, he's 2 years and 4 months old now. So it's like ball of energy running around. But what's interesting for me is he knows when we're connected. So as in looks me in the eye, directly in the eye, can tell him I love him, can tell him that we appreciate him, that we're thankful for him. And then you can see that because he'll give us a hug or a kiss, or he'll squeeze us. So number one, showing him that he's valued, that he's important to us. And then by doing that, it also means that when he does things that we don't think are healthy for him or good, they will say to him, hey, daddy says this or mommy says this because we don't think it's good for you and it's not right that you do it. Please respect my words. Now, I mean, he's 2 years and 4 months old. Right now, his conscious brain doesn't appreciate that, but he knows there's a context switch between, hey, I know I'm loved, but there's something I'm doing that's not right. And he'll have some giggle hanging in here. But then also we try and help him, like, if he's been running around outside and then he drinks his water and you can see him like gobbling the water down. And then you're like, that tastes really nice, hey? When you're thirsty and you drink water, it's good for you, hey? So reiterating patterns in him where there's context and then a reality of like, when I do this, this happens. And also when he runs around and we're wrestling or something like that, and then I help him see, you see how strong your body is, you see how, and to try to help him learn, okay, you can step from one step to the other or jump or everything like that. And then I see how powerful you are, I see how your legs can make you jump from here to here. I mean, he's already doing front flips off the couch. So it's like, I've got to be good with kind of helping him to not land on his head as a chiropractor, but he's going to do it anyway. I just got to help him say, hey, tuck your head under, then do it. And in that context, because as a dad, I have to take responsibility for my life, and so does my wife, and together as a couple and then as a family, we're trying to set him up the best way we can so that he does look at life like, hey, there's so many possibilities and I have all this ability and a talent and I can go and do it. But then also the education part from what we're talking about with health is also recognizing that there's laws of physics. Yeah, you can jump off a couch onto a beanbag, that's fine. But if you jump off the first floor onto the grass, you'll break a leg or die. The context is really important. And then to also realize that when he injures himself, that, okay, there's pain, that's good. Your body's signaling to you. And if we kiss it or we rub it, it can feel a little bit better. That he recognizes his body will heal itself. Or when we get sore and then he runs over and kisses you or something like this, that there's a recognition of physical contact, like, okay, that makes a difference if I'm feeling pain or something else, but also that the body is an amazing, intelligent system. And then as he gets older, the goal is for him to realize that when he goes to school, it's not just about him trying to pass a test so he can get a good grade. It's for him to try and realize, wow, this world we live in is incredible, and that it's not just me about trying to get a grade, but actually trying to learn lessons about the principles of life and everything else, and do it while we have fun. So in that context, yes, I think every kid should be taught, but it's not like we want to teach it again because like you have to pass the test. It's just the reality of like there's certain contexts and functions in life that whether you like it or not, it's not a vacuum. So the consequence of whether you learn that my body is self-regulating and self-healing, and whether you put that into practice, that's a bit like your family life and how you grow up is going to be a huge context of that. Not just whether a teacher tells you at school, but whether that teacher actually believes it themselves or is living that out. That's a pretty important one. And so the more I go through this journey, I'm like, wow, I realize where we've put a lot of structures in place in order we want to give people education, we want to give people healthcare, we want to give people the best possibility to live a good life. But yeah, there's also this part where my mind, my body, my brain, I have to understand how to take information and discern over what it means for me and how I best want to live my life. And so I think from what I have read, it seems like by the time you're 4 to 7 years old, a lot of your belief system is already built. So when we talk about kids in preschool or homeschool, whatever it is, and going into primary school, I mean, a lot of what your brain already and how it sees the world is already sort of locked in by a really early age. So some of these principles are huge. And then after that, you're trying to sort of live it out. And yeah, so that for me it's incredible too to see my son too, because it's like, if he gets sick, if he has a cold or something like that, of course my wife still breastfeeds him. So she's breastfeeding him up until now. And that's kind of been an interesting journey because I can't breastfeed. So that reality is the connection between my wife and my son. And then I've said to her, hey, of course we know breastfeeding is great for a child. At what point you choose that's going to be when you stop or not is up to you. So then there's also that thing of when he's sick, he naturally, like, it's interesting, when he's sick and when he's in pain, naturally he goes to my wife. When he's like naughty and wants to play, it's like there's a shift towards me. And in that context too, it's interesting because it's like he's already learning, okay, if I have pain or I'm not feeling good, he knows where to go already because mommy will help breastfeed him, but also we'll try and help him realize that he needs to eat good food because his body needs to have the energy to be able to heal and to do all these things. And so we're just trying to live natural, organic lives in the sense of like, this is how we think the best way we can live. And in that, he's picking up this stuff all the time. And then you can just see it, like it's hilarious. I mean, I'm quite a tactile, feely person, but when he's enjoying his food, like he's like, and you can just see him, he's like, he's just enjoying it. And then we can say to him, hi, that tastes nice. Eh? So he's getting the context of like, okay, what goes into my body can be good and enjoyable and healthy. And then at the same time, he can run around outside and enjoy to be in the sun. And so I think this is also why being healthy, you just think, yeah, that's a simple concept. But then in reality, you realize it's so layered in the depth of it, because depending on what our childhood's like and how you grow up, just all these layers of conditioning are sort of played into that, because that's just how the brain develops. it's profound and also, I don't know, it's really deep. So like all the questions you're really asking, I'm like, yeah, it's deep, because I just think people need to realize it's not just a mathematical equation, although it's physics. It's also this reality of can we live authentic lives of responsibility? And I think that's where it gets really difficult. I know for me, it's one of the hardest things I have to do. Being authentic, being honest, being true. It's like a world out there that just sometimes is anything but that. So, I mean, I don't know, we talked a little bit before that you kind of notice your journey and the transitions you're taking. It is to be an authentic, honest, responsible human. Yeah, that it's like it never ends. It actually just continues, and not to live in fear and the programming of other people. But I mean, yeah, that's where, from when you're a kid, that's already a huge part, right? How do you notice that for yourself?
Yeah, of course. It's a challenge to follow your own path in the modern world. I think a lot of people struggle with making the right decisions, especially for their health. You are a doctor of chiropractic and you work as a performance coach. What challenges do you see most among people who visit you? Because I think the people who are listening now or watching also struggle with making the right decisions in thinking, eating, drinking, sleeping, connecting, moving.
It's almost like when you ask me that question, everything in the clinic to when I do more private one-on-one high-end stuff, I think it's for me, I think everybody really wrestles with. A lot of people say, okay, Dan, I believe my body is self-regulating and self-healing. But then they're still struggling with pain or a body that just feels blocked or stressed or tight, or symptoms that always just keep coming back. So for us, it's like, I think the bigger picture thing that people struggle with is the context of why is my body continuing to keep on creating symptoms or have this dysfunction that I have, and then why does it not get better? Yeah, well, great question. And that's also for us. So our biggest goal in the clinic, and there's 4 of us in the clinic, great team, is that we try and find out, number one, why hasn't that person's body fully healed whatever's gone on? And then second of all, if they don't necessarily have pain anymore, why hasn't their function returned? So someone might come in and say, I hurt my ankle or my lower back. I don't have pain, but I just can't squat properly, I can't run properly. If I sit, I get this blocked, restricted feeling or tension. And so then we trying to say, okay, how do we find out why the body's doing that, or why that's the case? And the biggest thing I think people come to us for is like they're either stressed or overstimulated, and then they're stuck in that pattern, and that's producing a whole lot of issues, or that they've got these physical signs and symptoms in their body all the time that they potentially have seen a lot of people already, and they're coming to us going like, yeah, my friend or my family member saw you, they think you can potentially help me. Yeah, but I just really don't understand. I do this, this, and this. I do what everybody tells me to do, and it's still not getting better. And so that's where the last 10 years of the work we've done is to try and really hone into how the brain and body regulate and send information back and forward. And then how do we specifically do exams and tests to work out for that person why their body is particularly having those symptoms and dysfunction, and then trying to create a plan that can get them out of that and then into a lifestyle where how they move, how they think, and the decisions they make are as close to the natural laws of physics and nature that allows them to sustainably do that by themselves. And then we're always in the background. If they need us to double check things for them, we can be there. But so yeah, stressed, overstimulated, and there's this thing that keeps coming back in their body that they always have problems with. And then it's for us to help them. Yeah, well, if you're sitting 8 to 9 hours a day, that's not the natural function of the body. You have to appreciate, doesn't matter how nice you want to think, that's the physics of compressing your spine for 8 to 9 hours a day. Okay, the fact that you might be a lawyer or an accountant or a tech engineer that has to sit there and code or do whatever, it's like, yeah, society's given you a job that allows you to do awesome things, but in nature you're still compressing your spine and not moving. So that has consequences biologically. This might be really nice, stimulating for your brain, but there's also a heck of a lot of things going on in your brain then, and your brain and body aren't disconnected, they're connected. So a brain that's overstimulated and stressed to find solutions and work, and there's a lot of things going on, that's going to also influence the body. So then we just try and help them understand that, and then say, okay, what are the things we can physically do that try reset some of those inputs you're getting, but then also what are the things you can do away from here that can actually make your brain and body function better in a natural way. And I think people find that really helpful, and we see really good results with people when they take responsibility, number one, and then we do the adjustments we do to help shift the body back into better function. Okay, these are the exercises we think you need to do with that. These are the things you can do at home to switch those inputs into the brain, and then the brain will self-regulate better again after that. So, yeah, I hope that...
It's kind of interesting that it's almost never a quick fix. So when people visit you with a problem in the shoulder or the knee, the real problem isn't the shoulder or the knee, but it's a symptom from something in their life.
But how if we talk a little bit about you, where you had come in, for different reasons, we were working with you, and then you were training for Hydrox, right? Hyrox. Yeah. And then you were like, yeah, everything's feeling okay, but my knee just keeps on being painful. And I said, yeah, well, when I test you and I do the exams, there's nothing here wrong with your knee. I said, bring your running shoes in. And then when I looked at your running shoes, I'm like, yeah, they're way too narrow, so your big toe is being pushed in, and I think it's causing your knee to fall in. Boom, we shift your shoes, and it felt different straight after that.
Yeah, it was... for me, I learned a lot from that session, because I just was used to having knee problems after running a couple of kilometers. And for me, when I look at last year's, that's kind of something that's something that I have. That I was used to it. So I never thought about even about the wrong shoes or about the wrong way that I'm walking or the way, because you really helped me with breathing while running, with my chest, and that helps me a lot. And so it are very important details. It aren't even details. It's just kind of principles. Yeah.
And I think that's amazing, because like this is, and I think this I find fascinating, because all the work you've done and the incredible specializations and information you have, but then like it's the same thing for me. I can't adjust my own body. I can't analyze myself. I mean, I've got okay, I think this is why this happens, but I have to lie down on the bench and one of my team have to then check my body that it's functioning good. So I'm training for an ultra marathon next year, 90 to 100 kilometers. Yeah, I'm getting to the 3-4 hour point now of running. So I'll probably be running for anywhere between 10 to 12 hours when I do that race. I've never run full marathons yet or anything like that. So, but sort of stupid that I do this, but my dad ran it basically 3 times. My brother and I said, yeah, we have to do this, run this at least once, and we've been saying that for 5 years already. And then like last year, we're like, okay, pull our finger out and actually do it. So it's interesting for me now, because I'm hitting things in my body that I've never experienced before, because I never ran that far before. So all my training and everything else, it's really interesting for me. So even though I can have this knowledge and awareness in my head, I can't adjust my own body sometimes. I almost have to like move into an area where I'm pushing the boundaries of what my body's been used to. Like these symptoms come up, and then my team checks me, okay, this is what we think is going on. Okay, now I have to go back and modulate and adapt my training and my strength so that I can go past this. And it was just my body saying, hey, you've loaded, like in this case, my left knee, loaded this too much. I know my shoes are good. I know everything else. It's just my training and how I have to shift that to be able to go to the next level. And I think that's the amazing thing, is to lie down on the bench and get adjusted myself and get worked on myself. I have to let go, and then I have to take responsibility for what my team tell me I have to do. Even though I can be the leader, I still have to be responsible in my body. Yet so often it can be something simple as better shoes or something like that, but it could also be something more complex, deeper in the knee, like, okay, an old injury that still you haven't really rehabbed it properly, and the body is now showing these continual outputs where you're not stabilizing your knee properly, or the hip is the issue or something like that. And I think we'll get into it later a bit with the jaw and stuff, where the more we do our tests, the more we realize the body's showing us why something is not right. And normally we go to the deeper chains of what the feedback inputs into the brain and what we call proprioception and mechanoreception. And so, okay, this pathway back in keeps on sending these signals. So the brain has to deal with that signal and then control it back out in a certain way. And that comes in a compensation or in a twist or something like that. And so we need to then work on that area, but then help you go away and then change what you were doing so that that area starts to function correctly, which means the brain gets better inputs. But the habit that you built around that pattern for 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, yeah, that takes time to change. So there's a context of, okay, how long your body's healed a injury or a trauma, but the consequence of your function hasn't got better after that. And so now it's like trying to help people realize this is why your function hasn't got better. You don't have any pain anymore, but your function hasn't got better. And then suddenly they see and notice that that feels different, but now they have to go away and actually use that function. And that's where I think it's like, yeah, but then I'm too busy, or I've got this going on. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not the one who defined the laws of physics and gravity. You take that consequence yourself. So if you don't deal with that function thing, it will keep coming back. And then that's that self-responsibility and actually making decisions to make a shift. And I think for a lot of people, that's just really hard because they're already like, Dayne, I've got 50 million things I've got to do. Now you tell me I've got to do that too. Yeah, maybe reduce some of those 50 million other things to what's actually really important. Because if your health is not important, we don't live in a vacuum. At some point or another, that will become something that will define your quality of life and how you function.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because I love challenging myself and my body. I loved and also suffered during the high walks. I ended in 1 hour, 9 minutes and 21 seconds. But don't you think you have to be a little crazy also to run an Ironman for 10 up to 12 hours?
I mean, of course, but I think that this is the interesting...
It has to be a deeper meaning.
Yeah, completely. So the one thing I'm going to do is it's called the Comrades Marathon, which is 2 marathons back-to-back in South Africa. In 1 year, you run from the coast up into the mountains, and then another year from the back down. Yes, there is. I think this is also when there's certain, and I'm talking predominantly first world countries now, I think there's a certain level of comfort that we've got in the first world. That means we don't really actually test the body in terms of what it's possible doing in the mind and the body. And so once you get to a certain level of maybe responsibility or leadership or function, after a while you start to realize, hang on a second, I know I'm able to do more, but the context, society is not asking me for more. Sometimes it's asking me to consume more or look better or be more fancy or something. But in the terms of the laws of physics and nature, yeah, this is where the real health and function lies. So for me, I knew that it was, I mean, I've played elite sports, I've worked with elite athletes, people, incredible business. If you don't have a goal or you don't have a vision, yeah, well, what the heck are you moving towards? So I realized in my own life, I have, in terms of how I prioritize my marriage and my family and my faith and everything, but also the reality on the other side of, that means I take responsibility for my body, but I have to also learn what are the ways where we've moved out to the countryside. And the reason we wanted to do that was always the goal, that we would be able to be in a natural environment. But that's also because I want to move in a natural environment and I want to have the stimuli of a natural environment. So if I get out and I'm running for 10Ks or 20Ks or 30Ks or 40Ks, yeah, I get to run in the mountains. And that means for me, I'm enjoying nature, but I'm also testing my body. So I know, and even I'm not even doing anything that I think is that crazy in the context of people that run flipping a marathon every day for a flipping year, or this guy that ran from the most southern points of South Africa all the way to the north of Africa. I mean, he's going to laugh at me if he were to hear this. But he obviously knew that there was something inside of him that he believed was bigger than himself, that he was able to achieve, that he could inspire other people by. And so that's what kept driving him. And then he did go through some insane realities to run that whole race. So in me, I know I'm able to continue to grow. I'm able to be stronger. I'm able to lead better. But I also have to know that inside my head, there's certain processes I need to go through, that when my comfort part of my brain, my 21st century brain says, but Dayne, that's enough. Just relax, just go lie on the couch, just watch some TV. I know from a leadership perspective that that's not going to help me be a better human. What's going to allow me to be a better human is making sure I get my 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep at night, but I actually use my body for the function it has been created and designed for, which on the flip side of The body hasn't changed in thousands of years, nor has the brain. But the context of society and culture has changed drastically. So the stimuli coming in and out of my brain, yeah, that just means we're on like hyperdrive all the time. So I need to also realize, okay, if I am in the context of high performance in the clinic and working with these guys that take a lot of responsibility and are really big performers, when I'm there, I'm on, I'm going, my nervous system's in fight or flight, I'm ready to go. But then I have to realize how to switch that off and go into a natural environment. And then also when I run, that's also when I process a lot of my thoughts. So I try and build a movement, health and function around what I know allows me to let my body progress and grow and get stronger, but at the same time also allow me to be mentally and physically sharp and clear and honest. And I'm just a better human when I'm strong and healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great, because you are the founder of the Human Health Chiropractic in Amsterdam. And the website states, at Human Health Chiropractic Amsterdam, we believe that you are designed in body and mind to live a full life from birth to your last breath. If I look at the current health system in the Netherlands, for example, we visit a dentist 2 times a year, also preventively. Would it be a great thing to also visit, for example, a chiropractor once or twice a year?
Good question.
Because most of the people only come when they have serious symptoms or really complaint about their body, instead of I'm feeling great. Can you check if everything is working properly, or where can I even optimize some functions?
So it comes back to the thing, I don't think it really matters who you see. I think you need to have someone you know you can trust, and that they actually have the clinical experience and skill set to help you function the best way you can. So like there's good dentists, bad dentists, there's good chiropractors, bad chiropractors, good doctors, bad doctors.
Yeah, because you have a lot of holistic specializations.
Yeah. And so for me in that context, the reason we say that on our website is to help people get the context of like, it is possible to be healthy from birth until death. And it is possible for us to live a life of function and health and connection and all these types of things. But your body physically is a huge proponent of whether that's going to happen or not. And your quality of life is going to define that. So we also know that there's a direct connection between education levels and health outcomes. So then often you will find people that have taken the time either to become self-study in an area and be aware, take more responsibility, or they have had an education system that allowed them to be aware, like, okay, I do need to take responsibility. And so they use the healthcare system, but also the way the healthcare system is set up, it's technically a sick care system because you're waiting until you're sick before something happens. Dentistry is a little bit better because they're realizing, okay, we need to prevent things as early as possible. And like, for instance, if they think you've got a cavity, they can take an x-ray and see the cavity. But again, it's still very like, okay, the cavity has to be there for them to see it. They don't really know. They can kind of get a context of, okay, there's something coming up to that point. We work a lot with dentists, so that's just why I'm trying to give that context. But in the body too, I mean, coming to the Netherlands, whether it's a chiropractor or a manual therapist or a physiotherapist or an osteopath, we're all working on the body. And if you find a good person that cares about you and knows how to take responsibility for what is their role versus what is your role, I think, having someone that you can go to that's working on your body is vitally important, particularly as society gets more busy and more stressed and more overstimulated. But in the same context, what I notice a lot of the time is because of the way certain professions are educated, they go again to like, okay, symptoms in the knee or the feet, or they're waiting until the symptoms define the care they can give, which is also understandable because it's easy to measure. Like if you came in and I just said, okay, Richard, is there something wrong with you? And you go, no, there's nothing wrong. I actually want to be better in terms of move well, be strong, and these are my goals. That's going to take more clinical knowledge, and it's going to take more experience to actually help you along that journey. Versus if you came in and just said, oh, I have a knee problem, okay, that already takes my focus to the knee. But in our clinic, it's also to say like, okay, I'm interested in how well you move overall, because that has direct context to your quality of life. How well you breathe, how well you recover. What's happened to the body? Have you had big car accidents or fallen down the stairs? Or if you're a woman and you've given birth, how well did you recover after the birth? Was it a difficult birth? Was it an easy birth? What's happened when you were a kid? Did you break bones or dislocate bones or joints, sorry? Or what has happened? Because the context of that's really important. And then as you move through it, you start to realize that sometimes people, based on their awareness, is the questions they ask and the care they seek. And then you get other people that either through not getting what they thought they wanted, they go like, okay, this isn't working, and then they ask better questions, and then they look for somebody who's trying to really help them be healthier in a physical context in particular. And so for us, is it good to get checked? Yes. But also, what is the context of why you're wanting to get checked? Like with my son, I can take him to a dentist one day and let the dentist just do the general checks. But I know that I will already work with a functional dentist one day with my son. We do that with ourselves already, because I'm interested in how his body develops towards what's the natural design of the human body and what it's meant to function like, and not wait for dysfunction to define, or sickness or illness to define the trajectory of care. And so there's like sickness, prevention, and performance. And I'm like, yeah, well, we can all just live and seek healthcare from a performance perspective, because that's possible. We live in the 21st century. We send rockets to the moon. Elon Musk can send a rocket, bring it back down now, and catch it in midair. I mean, profound. And then we're worried about whether in our healthcare systems now that that's probably the one thing that I get frustrated the most about, is like, we've got all this technology, we have all this awareness, all this knowledge, access to information, and we still struggle with some of the things we struggle with in the 21st century. That for me is just a bit mind-boggling, but I also understand people are just busy and stressed, and so they just wait till they hit the wall on something and then let that define them. So yeah, that is the difference between sickness and prevention, and then also performing and functioning at your best.
Yeah.
Sorry, big answer, but it's...
Yeah. But because I met you, I think, last year, because I've been receiving treatment from you in recent months, where you work together with a biological dentist, Erik-Jan Muts, where I'm also receiving treatment. What is the relationship between the teeth and the body?
Great question. Also very big taboo topic sometimes.
Because
I'll try.
Erik-Jan told me, you really have to go to Dayne, because we will work together, and because I will working in your mouth and he will working on your body, because when they work together, it's even better. Yeah.
So this is quite a big sort of topic and important. So you ask about how the teeth connects to the body. I will try explain it's more how the nervous system is connected to the teeth, back to the brain, and how the brain influences that with the jaw and the neck and breathing. So, I mean, I don't know if it's possible for people, if they want to Google it, or if it comes up on the screen later in the podcast or something, depending. So you have the teeth, like the white things we see, but there's these ligaments, in Dutch you call them banden, the periodontal ligaments that hold the teeth from the teeth into the bone in the jaw. And these ligaments have receptors that tell the brain about the pressure on the teeth, and also whether the angle of the pressure on the teeth. So it's like stretch receptors too. And that then feeds back to the brain and tells the brain, okay, how much pressure is in here? But then there's also, that's called mechanoreception, but then there's also something else called proprioception, which is how the brain knows where the swallowing bone is and where the muscles are and where the airway is and where the jaw is, to know what it has to do now that the food's in the mouth and whereabouts in the mouth it is and how the tongue's connecting it. So when you go to the dentist and the dentist looks at the different types of the way your jaw and teeth connect, they're trying to ask, okay, is this normal? Is this functional? For a lot of people, they might not have symptoms, but not yet. There can be a lot of issues that are already there that can produce symptoms in other areas of the body that we're not aware of yet. As an example, your jaw is a bit further back, so the way in which you bite, there's a certain class of bite that you have. So Erik-Jan was going to try help your jaw move forward a bit more, but also to expand and make sure that the bite that you have is really good for your maxilla, which is the top part of your jaw, how the bottom jaw connects with your teeth, and what that does to your swallowing and airway, which is related to breathing. And so he knows, and we've worked with him, and we've found a lot of times where we were working with people that are having neck issues or jaw issues or issues in further down their back, and it was basically all our tests kept on showing how the way they were chewing, swallowing and breathing was causing the body to then get really tight up the top, and it came back to that they needed to either have their teeth worked on or the position of the jaw was an issue. And it didn't matter what we did, we would adjust, we would give them exercises, the same thing would keep coming back until they went to the dentist and addressed the occlusion issue, which is what you call about how the teeth touch together and how the jaw works. And then once they sorted that out, their symptomology went away and their function improved. So we were like, okay, we have to work with dentists, because we were finding more and more issues were becoming, that were actually just either things that weren't addressed by dentists early on, and I can understand they're really busy and there's a lot of things, and so that they're stressed and busy in and of themselves, but then, for instance, how the tongue would work in the mouth, how people would swallow and everything else, that was also a big issue. And so what we were noticing is, okay, we have to try to give people a context to what was going on. So in your case, we had to say, okay, how do we best work on the muscles in your jaw, the joint in your jaw, the swallowing muscles down to here, which connect to your neck, which is how you breathe, how that stabilizes up in your neck, and these feedback systems into your brain to make sure that when you are finished with Eric Jan, that your jaw function is actually as good as it can be, how your teeth connect and what that does to all the muscles in your neck, the swallowing and your airway are structurally as good as they can be, but functionally that you have the best function you can in terms of how your neck moves, your jaw moves, your tongue moves. And we know that that's important, because if you look at a baby, when a baby is born, what's the first thing that a doctor is going to check is make sure that the baby has a suck reflex and is able to attach to the nipple and drink, or drink from a bottle. Why? The baby's not conscious of that. It's these mechanoreception that when you put pressure onto the palate, or then suddenly they start doing that. So that's like a reflex in the brain. And then when the milk gets to a certain part in the throat, then the brain already knows, okay, because of what it's feeling and the pressure, it now knows it needs to swallow. So that reflex is always sending information back to the brain, but then the reflex disappears over time because we become conscious. Okay, if I have something in my mouth, do I suck this? Do I chew this? Do I do a combination of that? And then how do I swallow it? But then there's certain, if you start to change, so for instance, people's jaws can be moved more left or right, they call that a midline shift. Or people just chew on one side, either because the jaw's not in a good position and so they can only chew on one side, or they grind their teeth and so their teeth height is different left or right, and then it means even when they bite, one side doesn't touch, they can only bite on the other side. Yeah, if you do that over time, you're going to end up getting a compensation in the jaw that can end up affecting something in the neck or lower down. And so there's all these contexts of like what's actually going on in the body. So for us, we try and examine all of that before we just go, oh yeah, we're just going to adjust this, or yeah, just do that or that, because we know that that feedback loop that's always in there, there's underlying reflexes and inputs that define how the brain runs that stuff. And so to bring it all around, it's not just about the white things in your mouth of teeth, it's actually how the ligaments and the nerves and the nervous system receives information back to the brain, and how the brain then uses that to define function and moving. So in that context, we're seeing more and more that we have to be really aware of, particularly kids when they start to lose their milk teeth and go into their adult teeth, how much space they have in their jaw, how that influences the airway for breathing at night. So you see a lot of issues now with sleep apnea and snoring at night, and that's basically the tone and function of the jaw and tongue is reduced so much that when they lie on their back at night and gravity is influencing it, pulls everything shut, and then they can't breathe properly. And so then they have to have these big masks, or if they go to a good otologist specialization in dentistry, they create these bite pieces for them, which is also what we already know a lot of the time we have to have people use. And you can see a lot of these tongue holders or people taping their mouth shut now. A lot of this stuff is because we realize how important and vital that area is. So that's, yeah, so it's not just the teeth, it's actually the jaw and the neck and the swallowing reflexes and how the brain works with the neck too. So.
Yeah, because nowadays more and more children seem to be wearing braces compared to the past. So is the jaw only getting worse, or are you hopeful for the future? Especially when I look at my oldest son is 14. I think almost everything now in his classroom is wearing braces. And in my time, a couple of the 30 children, but certainly not everybody.
again.
Of course, it can also have to do with more consciousness, of course.
Yeah. So I think that, again, a big question, and I think it's one of those ones where we know that a good occlusion is important, so as in how the teeth contact and where that is. There's also, people want to have nicer teeth these days, so I think aesthetics plays a big role. So that also, we ask, when people have had braces, we ask them, was that an aesthetic thing, or was it a function thing with your jaw? Like, did you have a bad bite, or was there issues with the jaw or the teeth or something? Because for us, that's a big context. I also think, if I can give the example of my own son, part of why we also, and this was a decision my wife wanted for herself too, was to breastfeed as long as she could, because that process of breastfeeding, like having to pull the nipple in and press it to the top of the palate and then use the tongue, that's massive for stimulating the top of the palate, so widening it, which later down the line is huge for then the position of the jaw to come in. So we're seeing a lot more narrowing of the jaw. But again, it's related to, like, why do babies not have teeth when they are born? Well, because they're predominantly going to live off milk and then some water. And so that means they don't need to chew on anything, they need to suck and swallow. And then the teeth come because now the digestive system's maturing to the point where it can take more solids in, but then, they slowly is going to be the front teeth and then the bigger teeth going back. And so we're also seeing that the natural evolution of what we should be using the jaw for and the teeth for, if we change our food sources, that influences what happens in the teeth. Now, I'm not a dentist, so I'm not speaking to dentistry now, but we're noticing more and more in the world of mechanics that kids, number one, either don't get breastfed that long, so we notice their function of their tongue is not very good, so they don't know how to swallow properly. So a good example is, if I say the word na na na, where I go na, if this is the front of my teeth, this is the back of my teeth, my tongue would be sort of in this point here, and then from here I should swallow backwards. For a lot of people, they don't even know how to put their tongue there and do that motion, or if they do, it's like you see this really big neck movement, and that's because their tongue function is almost, call about it, tongue posture is not good. And then it's like you have to work with a logopodist, so someone who teaches them how to use their tongue to pronounce their words, but also to swallow properly, because that has a big input. And instead of then swallowing from the top, they often push their tongue into their teeth. And then, if you're swallowing a few hundred times a day to a few thousand times a day, it's pushing into your teeth. That is going to make your teeth go skew. And so we say to people, we just always ask the question, well, why do we think this is happening? And then you ask the questions, okay, how long will you breastfeed for when you're younger? Or did you suck your thumb? Or did you use a dummy for a long time? Or what are some of these? So thumb suckers, they end up having this big open bite and everything else. So for us, it's just trying to understand the context of what's happened with that, and then how they can best do that. But then also it takes, you would hope that the dentist picks it up really early on, because a dentist will refer you to an orthodontist who's going to actually work on those things. And you want an orthodontist, and it is difficult in the research. I understand that there's no clear, like, this is the position things should be, and I get that in dentistry, that's like a whole big thing. But for us, it's at least trying to say, hey, parents, be aware of this. Recognize breathing function, so the kids should be nose breathing, not mouth breathing. They should be able to use their tongue well, and their jaw function and swallowing function is really important. So I think the teeth stuff is a lot to do with that underlying function stuff, where there's just a lack of focus on it. Because we, like, even if we try to work with logopodists or dentists, like, they're just like, there's just so much. And if you tell a parent, your kid's not got a good swallowing pattern and they need to work on this, they're like, bloody hell, between homework from school and just how intense life is and blah, 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 now you want me to do all these other things. It's like, I get it. But again, it's not a vacuum. These things will have consequences down the line. And so how you help them work on that stuff becomes really... We're trying to educate them so they can make better decisions. Dentists can do great at again, widening the palate or bringing the teeth into the right position. It's just we also know that there's a lot of consequences when that's not done well. We see the effect of that. So when we work with dentists now, it's just trying to say, how do we get the structure all right so it can encourage good function, but how do we get good function in the beginning, because that naturally will then allow function to be good later down the line. So if you have someone who's got a good swallowing pattern and tongue posture, good jaw position, good biting, good breathing, you sort of end up finding less issues down the line with all that stuff, and that's just because of the natural trajectory of health and function specifically around that. Mm-hmm. So I think dentistry, I mean, I've also thought about it. If I had infinite time and energy, I would study to be a dentist and also go back through a medical doctor, so that if someone came in, I could try be in the main medical system, helping them see how we can better define things, but then also have the practical skills of a chiropractor to check the body, see what needs to be adjusted and not adjusted, let the body do what it has to do. And in the context of dentistry, connect those all together, because I think there needs to be like this manual therapy area with medicine and with dentistry all together connected, that interdisciplinary, like not one saying we better than you or they better than them. How do we all just serve humans in the best way we can and not say like that person's not good enough or this person's not good enough? And I get that there are people out there that aren't authentic and are crooks and want to steal stuff and do things that are bad. Of course, I'm not saying that, but it's just in the wider context, people almost feel like lost in the system because it's not helping them be healthier, it's just hoping they don't die. And then if there's like crisis management, we're good at that again, but then it's just a big thing. And I think it comes back to that self-responsibility, but also greater awareness and education around these topics, which I think will be my journey for the rest of my life. But it's so connected to what you do too. But yeah, I know you sometimes wrestle with these concepts too.
Yeah, because you are saying that's the journey for the rest of my life. I heard you saying it's my passion to see people truly be able to fulfill their human potential and genetic possibilities. Of course, at one hand, you have a lot of knowledge. At the other hand, of course, it's the challenge to integrate it also in your own life. Yeah. Also, you travel back and forth to Amsterdam every week where you work in the practice. How do you keep balance in your life, and how do you integrate all your amazing knowledge also in your life?
Oh, great question. I think in this context, like what drives me is really important to recognize, because I think through everything that I've been through, it's made me be grounded in a sense like, okay, again, I talk about the laws of physics and of nature, because that is what it is. If I pick my phone up and I drop it on the floor, 100 times out of 100 times it's going to hit the floor. So I know gravity is always going to be there. I know I only have a certain amount of time in the day. I know that the laws of thermodynamics is energy is not created or destroyed, only transferred. So what am I putting into my body? How am I using my time? How am I using my energy and my brain and my body? And so then I have had to build a hierarchy of what are my values, what are the principles that I think are most important, and how do they define my decision making. So my marriage, my faith, family, health, function, nature, these are like some of the key important values in my life, and so they define my decision making in that sense. So the journey is meant by studying all these different areas of biology, physiology, physics, anthropology, epistemology, theology, philosophy. It's made me aware of like, Jesus, world and universe is incredible. Okay, and I have to wake up in the morning and go to the toilet and be a father and a husband and just be Dayne and help people. And so what I've learned over time is there's certain decisions that nature just allows me to make because I'm a part of nature. I'm not separate to it. So that means I try to get my 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep. I try to expose myself to natural sunlight as much as I can. I pray. I have a strong faith in the sense of like, I don't believe I'm here by mistake. I believe like I have a designer, and I have a faith that always gives me hope. So I'm always inspired for the future. And that also means that I'm always trying to be solution orientated into like, okay, although I see the healthcare system we have and society moving to where it's going, I'm like, okay, how do I try to be a solution in my own life that can be a role model for others? Or I believe great leaders don't make more followers, they make more leaders. How do I do that? I help other people make better decisions in their life, that they can take responsibility and be a better leader. So I need to do that in my own marriage, in my own family, in my own household, in my own business, those around me, love and serve them. And I believe because I've gone through some of those difficulties with my dad, it's also meant that I know that suffering is also part of the same coin of life. So on one side is life and inspiration and joy and all these great things, and on the other side is death and suffering and just there's evil in the world, and it's just not nice. So I realize I have both of those together, and so in the context, I also choose to grow, which means I know that there's going to be suffering involved with that. There will be pain. I've been in the clinic long enough now and had the clinic that you start to see deaths and people that you cared about, suddenly they have the diagnosis of cancer or something and very quickly they're gone, or suddenly there's an accident and then you're left in this really traumatic space. But then it's to love people, be empathetic to them, like be in their life, care about them, but also not be sucked into depression and believing that there will be a better future for them. But for me in that context is I live a very natural lifestyle, good whole foods, I exercise, sleep light, but at the same time have good people around me because I value connection, trust, strong family life. And also, I mean, I'm born in South Africa, so for me the European winters are difficult, so my wife and I make decisions where, okay, we save up that we can go to South Africa every Christmas, New Year, so that we can see my family, so my family's still over there, and then also just get that sunshine, because it makes a massive difference with me and how I feel, and I noticed that really early. And so these are some of the things that I do where I try connect all these different areas in my life in a way that is succinct. I take responsibility. I recognize how I can use my talent to serve and bless other people, but then also recognize that is the blessing in a way. Like if you just give to people expecting nothing in return, there is something incredible about it. But then also recognizing in the clinic we have to set up certain ways so that the clinical knowledge we have, the care we provide is done ethically, legally, in the right ways, but at the same time do it in such a way where people know it's a place they can come. And I always say the number one thing when people come into the clinic is, do they trust us? If they do, yeah, well then I've got the clinical knowledge to be able to help them. It's like, do they really open up about what's really going on in their body, what they're really feeling? I mean, you can have horrendous stories where a woman will come in and they have all these, and then you hear they were raped when they were a young girl, or they had really traumatic births that they haven't really talked to anyone about because it's such a emotional thing for them that's so intense. And then, yeah, well, you're going to have to work on those areas of your body and get them functioning again. And whether that's, we refer you to the right person to do that. But when they trust you, then they really open up. And I'm like, I have to trust my own soul and my own mind and the decisions I make, that when I go to bed at night, am I being authentic and honest human? Because that for me in the end makes me able to make tough decisions and see clearly and be honest about everything, rather than trying to be something I'm not. And then in that context, yeah, well, I'm lying to myself, number one. And if that's one of my highest values, well, then I'm not being an authentic human. And I think people can pick up on that more and more now, even though we're in a day and age of social media and all these other things. I think that stuff is gigantic, actually. So it's
yeah, because I think we both talk a lot about our genes and the mismatch with the current environment and modern society. How do you view many modern interventions in relation to human health, such as lamps with artificial light, microwaves, and for example, Wi-Fi routers?
Good question. I mean, I go back to physics. I mean, there's ionizing radiation and non-ionizing radiation. So it's recognizing everything has an electromagnetic signature. So for instance, when I talk about lamps and everything else, like right now, okay, these lamps are pumping out a lot of blue light. So it gives a lot of clarity. We can see a lot of things. And that's equivalent of like midday light. So I have to be aware that just like there's different vitamins and minerals that the body needs, there's different types of movement that the body needs, there's also different type of light that the body needs. And so there's certain wavelengths that when you only get a certain type of wavelength, yeah, that's going to affect the brain and body in certain ways if you don't get the others. And so I think it's a massive emerging market and research now, which is what they call it photobiomodulation, so as in photons from light and how that affects the body. And so, yeah, we try and switch lights off after 6, 7 o'clock in the evening where possible, or we have certain lamps, or we use a fire or candles. So we reduce everything so that the brain is getting the natural signals from nature. If it's dark, it's time to rest and calm down, and then go to sleep. And then when the sun comes up, we got to get going again. So I'm very much a fan of trying to go back to the natural spectrums of light. So also with my son, like particularly in the summer, if the sun is rising early, he'll be in his nappy and some shorts, and I'll be in my shorts. We'll be outside really early. So the rising sun And that's really low damage because the UV at that level is really low, but the red and infrared light is really good for the body. And then when UV really goes up, a bit of exposure, and then we get out of the sun again. And so we're trying to live in natural ways that we always would have done as humans, but not like I'm in here with a shirt to here and a jacket and everything else. Yeah, well, this is not the way my body for thousands of years was exposed to light, right? So it's also realizing we can get too much of certain amounts of light that aren't helpful for the body or for the brain, and then there's other times where we need certain other wavelengths of light that are really important. So yeah, I'm for sure a big fan of exposure to natural light and doing it in a clever way. I think what we do is we cover ourselves up for most of the year and then go on holiday for 2-3 weeks, fry ourselves under the sun, and then wonder why we've got some of the issues we've got. I think it's just going back to first principles and going, yeah, if we exposed ourselves way more during natural ways, we wouldn't have to do, or wouldn't have half the problems we have. But again, I'm not a dermatologist, so I don't want to speak too much to that. But also, I think there's just common sense things we can do. We don't have a microwave in our house. I mean, in that sense, we just try and either grill foods, bake foods, roast them, steam them, or broil them, because those are just sort of natural ways of how the body is can heat up food. There's two sides of it again. There's people that are like fully against microwaves. I'm like, okay, every now and again, if you use it, not an issue, but I find it a bit of a taboo topic again. I just know for me that I don't think it's necessary. We just rather make a priority where we cook our food and we're not just rushed and have to stick it in the microwave or something like that. So food for us is a big value. My wife's a nutritionist, so it means we actually take time to whole foods and do it really well. And then Wi-Fi routers, I think this is a big thing. I mean, let me just say, I'll say how I do it. So I'm not trying, because I know this can be a big thing in the world. On my phone, I have a electromagnetic a blocker, so that I always try to put that side against my body. Whether it's making a difference or not, I know, for instance, if I'm in the car and I want to put my phone on charge, if I have that underneath it, it won't charge my phone, so it's blocking that ability to electromagnetically connect. I have it on my laptop. We have it on our Wi-Fi routers. We have it on some of that. So I don't think there's so much back and forward in the research about it. So we just try be in nature as much as we can, so away from this stuff. But then also we put the blockers on wherever we can, but we don't live in fear of it. I also believe if a human is healthy and resilient, they can withstand that stuff. And I think that's also that difference between, it's a difference if I get in an X-ray machine or an MRI machine versus stand next to a router and all that sort of stuff. And that's that non-ionizing versus ionizing radiation. And that just, again, I'm not an engineer or a physicist, but I do believe we can read up on things and concepts and take responsibility for it. So that's how we do it in our family. But yeah, other people, I heard Elon Musk say you can have 20 phones on your head at one stage and it wouldn't make a difference. I mean, I wouldn't want to do that, but yeah, it's
Dayne, I'm really enjoying your expertise. You're an expert in the field of human design. I think we can talk for hours about movement, about function, about proprioception, about how the brain receives feedback. I think you already mentioned a lot during this episode, but if people are listening or watching, they are getting motivated in the process of self-healing, self-regulating, taking on responsibility. What's the first tiny step that people can take on their journey?
I think it's number one, if you recognize that the brain is self-healing and self-regulating. I think that's a profound truth to appreciate. And that would mean you can function well, you can sleep well, you can wake up refreshed. Your body is doing what it can do. You should be able to run, you should be able to jump, you should be able to move contextually, what age you are. That's important, of course, to take that into account. You should be able to breathe down until your belly relaxed. You should be able to let go and feel calm in your body. The tone of your body shouldn't be like this. You shouldn't be clenching your teeth all the time. So just being aware of those things is huge. And then I think the other thing is just also to realize that when that's not the case, to ask the question like, okay, what is the design of the body. So my hip joints are different to my knee joints, that's different to my jaw joint, that's different to my shoulders, that's different to my ribs, to my spine. So as an example, in the neck, we should be able to go into full extension, full flexion, rotation, lateral flexion, lateral flexion. And my eyes, my ears, and the muscles in my neck are all coordinating the position of my head because it's huge for balance and everything. So if you were to take an x-ray, you'd be able to see the angle of the joints in the neck, and that defines the ability to do all those range of motion. So the structure is actually defining the function of all these different movements. But when I'm, as an example, stuck looking at a phone all day, or driving for long hours, or looking at my phone, driving for long hours, and sitting at a computer all day, and my eyes and my body are only doing one particular motion all the time, then I'm losing that other function because I'm not using it, then things are going to get restricted and blocked and tight. So then for us is to say, okay, if I'm meant to be able to do exercises where I track my finger all the way around, so my eyes, the canals in my ears, my neck muscles are actually using those full range of motion in my neck. I'm actually not just looking at a screen, I'm looking far. I'm using my neck and my jaw and all the muscles the way they can be used. That's self-regulating too. So as in just using it for what it can be used for. And I think that's huge, where society means we just don't use the body the way it can be used, and then we end up having a whole lot of issues for lack of use. So it's almost like in the brain, use it or lose it. It's not like you lose the angle in of the joints in your neck, or sometimes you can. Like you see people on x-rays and you're like, flipping heck, how did you get that far? But still, the brain is also really incredible at adapting. So you look at I've seen pictures and videos of professional basketball players, and they show you pictures of their feet and their toes, and I mean, they're absolute mess. If someone came in, I'd be like, I don't know how in the normal context you're able to run, but it shows you the brain and body can do things when the feedback is good and the control systems are good and the function is overall good. And so in that sense, again, take responsibility, become aware of all these inputs that are actually going around, and realize what calm, healthy in the brain is relaxed, which is parasympathetic, rest, digest, relax. That is a normal state the brain can be in. I sleep well in that state. I breathe well, my muscles relax, my body heals, I'm calm. Fight or flight is the equivalent of me running away from a tiger and being willing to fight. My physiology in my body is going to be completely different between those two states. So also just realizing if you're always in fight or flight and always stressed, that's not good long-term for your body. Stress is not the issue. It's being able to disconnect and go to here and learn the principles of what it means. Breathe in through your nose, deep belly breathing, reduce stimuli, take light away, give your body the ability to sleep at night. But your mental health is really important too. It's not just whether you physically can see a tiger. If you lie in bed at night and there's emails flying through your head and relationships, your heart can be pounding at 150 beats a minute because you're thinking about something, because to your brain, it doesn't matter whether it sees something or thinks something. So just recognizing okay, this brain is incredible, but it's also super simple. What goes in and out of it defines what's going to determine its function. And so if we're aware of those things, we can really make links to it and then take responsibility. Okay, I mean, I have a trauma because I lost my father when I was 19 years old in such a quick way. Then, I've had to do work on that. I've had to take responsibility for things. And so also hearing my brother and my mom and the journey they've had to go on that. But how I processed it versus my brother or my mom, completely different. And so it's also getting to know yourself in that whole process. And I think that's the point of life, is to get to know ourselves. And then in that, when you know yourself better, you can make better decisions and lead better. And then in the context of your health, I think that also just progresses naturally like that. So, I think that's massive.
Yeah, it's a process of self-mastery, that
that's huge.
I'm always referring to. Dayne, is there anything else you would like to add at the end of the podcast?
Well, I think we've covered some incredible stuff. I think the biggest component for me is for people to just recognize that there are good people out there that are in the healthcare sector that genuinely care about people being better. And if you can find them, they can help you to function better and to move better and just be healthier humans. And our team that's there is number one, I trust them. And number two, we've tried to specialize and take the time to get to know what the brain's trying to do and how do we best help serve people so that they do well. But that people know in the context of healthcare, it starts first with, I take responsibility for my mind, my brain, my body, and the actions and reactions that I have, and not leaving it to an external entity to tell me what's going on in my body or to tell me what I think I should do. We live in a day and age now where we have more access to information than we ever have, but the quality of people's lives is like almost, you get to a certain age and then it's almost a given that you're going to need to have arthritis or need to have certain issues or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't believe that's necessary if we just take responsibility to know where can we access good information, good people that can help us when we have issues, and then to actually live lives of natural human function, which then means, yeah, we have this incredible planet and world that we can live in, and the human body is able to do that, and we're able to have happiness. And then also, if you feel down and depressed, that's also normal. That's a human emotion that you can have. But when you know that there's ways of how you move, how you eat, and how you think can influence those processes. But the biggest thing is like, how well do you breathe? How well do you chew, suck, and swallow? How does your body move? How well do you hold yourself up against gravity? And what state does your brain and body spend in most of the time? That basically will define the quality of your life, which is everything we work on in the clinic to try to help people recognize that and see that. And then, just go and give life your best shot in that sense, because it's like, I have this body to use it and my mind to be able to perceive things and go out and use my talents to serve and bless people. And so to wrap it all up, I think I'm always inspired because of how incredible the body and the brain is. And then when I look at everything that was ever invented or created came out of the human mind. I mean, that blows my mind just in that context. And then to know that the design of the human frame and the brain is just incredible. And now that we have even better technology and we do better research, we're realizing more and more, like flipping heck, it's all already in there. We can just, that's an inspiration to just know like, wow, I have an incredible brain and body, let me look after it. And then it'll look after me. And then you can go and do things. So to finish on, be inspired and know what your talents are and go out and serve and help people. I think that's for me most important.
Beautiful. Last question. Where can people find out more about you and about the clinic?
Predominantly everything is done through the clinic, so just humanhealthchiropractic.nl. We also got a website, people can have a look at that. Just simple as that.
Great. Thanks a lot, Dayne, for also your help and intervention in my journey. And of course, all the best in your work, but also in your journey.
Yeah, thank you very much. And to you too, exciting new chapters coming ahead for you too. And we'll stay connected. Bless you, man.
We will.
Bless you. Fijn.
Na 12 jaar komt er in 2025 een einde aan de Oersterk podcast. Maar geen paniek, de afleveringen zullen voorlopig beschikbaar blijven. Ik ga mijn avontuur verder vervolgen onder mijn eigen naam. Wil je mijn prikkelende avonturen en creaties blijven volgen? Schrijf je dan alvast in via www.risedelet.com. Alle goeds en wie weet, tot ziens ergens in de toekomst.